Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Yoyo. I am the Darth Bat Guy. Thank you guys for joining me once again. I am solo today. I am working alone right now. I love my friends. They know I love them. We have different schedules, so I'm gonna try to take on a lot of the weight of this podcast for myself. So thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for tuning in. But today I want to talk about a serious case of not appreciation, right? Too many biases and not enough appreciation for movies, films, and the two biggest things that are going on right now is DC versus Marvel again. And can I be honest? I'm gonna just be honest. All right, I'm gonna be honest with you. I love them both. I have them both. My room is filled Marvel, DC everywhere you look. Marvel, DC. A lot more Batman rather than all the other DC characters, but still. Even my logo, Darth Vader, Batman put together. Like I said in my intro video, like last year, it's been a year now since I've made this podcast, and the podcast was meant to be open to everything, to a conversation, to not only comic book movies but also movies. But I want to talk about this because there are too many biases, and this is recent because my friend, he knows he triggered me into making this. He didn't trigger me any other way, but to make this. And I want to tell my side, right? I want people to understand why I think the way I think, and I believe that I'm not incorrect in loving both. I love them both. I remember when I had a Twitter, and I make stupid memes and stuff like that of myself, and like even to this day, I can't even find it. I looked through it and I couldn't find it. But there was a time that I made a Twitter and I called myself Marvel Comic Boy or something like that, along those lines, right? And I was getting excited because of phase 1 of Marvel, starting and off and everything, because I was like, all DC's ever gonna do is Batman. Can you have too much Batman? No. But you can have terrible Batman, though. You could have bad Batman. Swear to me! So it's not Batman anymore, it's Batman. So yeah, like I do believe that Batman could get tired, it could be overrated, or they just don't know where to go, and I think Marvel was the brave one, the courageous one, to make the first move and stepping forward, because there was Marvel films beforehand, and there was always DC, movies of like Batman, and they had Superman first, and then they did Batman, and then after that, it was just Batman, and then Marvel was the one to be like, okay, let's do our lesser characters, and that's exactly what they did. They're like, let's put our team out there so people can know who we are. And even Marvel did a gamble, for this. They did a gamble with what they wanted to do, and the outcome of all this is like what, 13 years since Iron Man, 12 years, right, since Iron Man, and it's been successful, not without their flops. Well, not necessarily flops, but not without their bad movies. DC, God, they're in a different. They're the same, but they're different, and that's exactly what I want to talk about today. It might be short, it might be long, but I don't know. I'm gonna be doing a lot of ranting in this video because, again, I like both sides. Marvel, DC, doesn't matter. For me, I love superhero content, and it's just different every time we look at it, and we have to look at it not being too biased, enjoying the film as it is the story and everything, but you cannot compare the two where you're like, well, Marvel did this. If you say that, you're comparing one movie to the other, or they're the same genre, just different types, and one of the things that I did said was, it's like going from Power Rangers to Mortal Kombat or Street Fighter to Fight Club. Yeah, it has fighting involved, but it's not necessarily the same thing.
Oh, come on, how dare you? How dare I? How dare you?
Like the Defenders of the Realm. You have Mortal Kombat, right? And then you have the Defenders of the World or Galaxy or whatever, Power Rangers. Then you have Street Fighters, right? And then you have Fight Club. It's basically Street Fighter, but Fight Club, kind of. We could debate about that too, I know I'm going, but I'm just saying, like, the comparisons between Marvel and DC. Yes, they're both superhero movies. Yes, they have the same genre, just different takes. One is more greedy. One of them is more lighthearted, right? One is more for a certain demographic, and the other one is for a different demographic. And if you don't remember, go back to when the Adam West series of Batman.
Holy ashtray! Holy haberdash!
menagerie. Holy popcorn. Holy flypaper. Holy Koufax. Holy Jack in the Box. Holy red herring. Holy stuffing. Holy ravioli. Holy grammar. Holy safari. Holy headlines. Holy iceberg. Holy blizzard. Holy schizophrenia.
You know, the 1966 movie and the series that they did in the 60s, you're going to see a totally different Batman from what we see today. Tim Burton is the one who pushed to the darker, grittier, because that's what it was in the comics, you know, like a darker, grittier character. It wasn't supposed to be so lighthearted like Superman. If you would put Superman in Marvel, nobody would complain, right? That's all I'm saying. If you put Spider-Man in DC, I wouldn't complain because I love Spider-Man. He has a tragic story compared to everybody else. He has the more tragic story and he fits in DC. And then Superman, he has a heartfelt story. He's a Boy Scout and he could fit in Marvel. And this is the comparison I want to I want to make the difference in the comparison. These two movies are different. It's like saying Star Wars and Star Trek are in the same level. Yes, there's space exploration. One is a space odyssey. The other one is a space opera. Space opera is they call it the Skywalker saga, right? And I don't think George Lucas wanted to go with just Skywalkers, but that's what Disney just kept going with, you know, because I feel like George Lucas wanted to do a different version of his sequels and stuff like that. But we'll get into that later. The comparison is, yes, they're both the same genre. It's like watching a drama, right? You're not going to compare this drama to this drama. You're going to compare it to like, okay, who did better acting in the story? Maybe, right? But it's two different movies that can be appreciated in two different levels. Now, I'll admit, DC has some trash films out there. But some films that have been bashed are actually really good. Just like in Marvel, there's some films that are good overall, but there's some bad elements that just don't make any sense, so they shouldn't have been made. You know, kind of like how the hell was this made? Why did you make this? Like this for who was this? Right? It's like, you know, Star Wars now, like Star Wars and the sequels that they made. It was like, who'd you make this for? And then you got, you know, backlash. Again, we'll talk about that later. But I want to talk about that everything written or film has its own audience. You know, whether it's because of the business side of the deal or because of real fan. Zack Snyder is a real fan. He took a grittier take on DC, and I loved it. I love Man of Steel. I love Batman vs. Superman. I love his Justice League. There were movies that I disliked, right? And I will get into certain ones. But, like, I think they are similar, but overall they're different. They have a different take for many reasons, right? The superheroes are probably similar. They're probably close, but their storylines are definitely different. Take Spider-Man and Batman, right? The two biggest entities of each. You can't tell me that Spider-Man is not the biggest character for Marvel, because I think he is, you know, and the biggest character for DC is Batman, and they have similar storylines, but it's different, and we both enjoy those, right? We always criticize it, but it's the same.
Sir, you're out of order. Out of order? I show you out of order.
In the sense of, oh, they went through a tragic state, and they went through a tragic or traumatic experience, and this is what they become. One is poor, one is rich, right? One loses, you know, his parents and his uncle. The other one just loses his parents, right? And then you could be like, well, this one, he wanted to save the world, you know, from injustice. The other one wanted vengeance over the world of the injustice, you know, and stuff like that. And it's a balance of who goes where, or like where the story goes. For me, I love Batman. Spider-Man is really close, you know, for me to be, you know, in my top three. I to be honest, I would put Spider-Man in my top three. I'm gonna say my top three: Batman, Superman, and then Spider-Man. I know I talk a lot of crap about Superman if you watch my other podcast, or you know, but I love Superman too. You know, Superman had a good backstory, and I want to go back and reiterate what we said in DC versus Marvel when I talked about toxic fan base. Both sides have toxic fan bases, and that sucks because that takes away from what's the real objective of these films. You know, the story are changed because of toxic fans. Both sides, you know, like take Captain Marvel. Captain Marvel didn't have to go out and say she's the most powerful. She's not. You know, I love Brie Larson, you know, but did she really need to go that far? Did she have to push all those buttons? You know, Black Widow came out in the wrong time. I enjoyed the film. I thought Black Widow was great. just didn't fit the timeline, especially because she's not around anymore. Spoilers. That, you know, it's kind of like off timing. You know, it's like the Wonder Woman movie was good until the third act. The third act kind of be like, where are you going? Like, you had such a great story, and then what happened here? You know, it's studio interference that doesn't let the story be told the way they want to tell them and stuff like that. But I always hear the same arguments, never a different reasoning. It's just they're better. Like, okay, at work, there was this girl that was working next to me, and then I don't know how we got into the superhero talking, and then she told me that the new Batman movie sucked. She said it sucked.
What the f?
I got mad. Like, I got heated. I was like, what? I was like, what are you talking about? She was like, Spider-Man's better. And I'm like, wait, hold up. You're not comparing the two. You're not. You can't. It's impossible. You can't compare the two because, of course, one is going to be more successful than the other. And yes, Spider-Man, what is it called? Spider-Man No Way Home. Of course it was going to be a great film, especially because you do a big nostalgic act. Of course it's going to be a great movie. I love that movie. You know, I bought it in digital. You know, how you going to tell me that I don't love that movie? That movie was great. I don't think it was the best Spider-Man movie. It was the best origin movie that I've seen for Spider-Man, especially the Spider-Man of the MCU. I loved this story. I thought it was great. I love the retelling of, you know, Andrew and Toby's kind of Spider-Man. They kind of like led to it, but they didn't get too far into it. But now you can actually go back and rewatch the whole thing and say that Toby is the first, you know, Marvel movie. Not necessarily, but you know what I'm saying. And then she said that Batman was boring. I didn't get it. I was like, how old are you? And I guessed her age, and I was like, that's exactly why you don't like this movie, because you don't understand who Batman is. And she was like, no, it's just Batman. He's not all there. It's just it was boring. It was too much. It seemed like a detective. And I'm like, what the freak? Like, it is a detective movie. Like, what? Like, it's a noir take on Batman, and this is the closest Batman that we've gotten. You know, like, I think Ben Affleck is the best Batman, hands down, just because of the way he acted as Batman. And then the way his fight scenes, I thought his fight scenes were better, and he was the most Batman that we've seen on screen until now, even more than Christian Bale. Can you think about that? Like, how much runtime they had Batman on screen, and then you see Robert Pattinson. It was pretty much Batman the whole freaking movie. Even when he was Bruce Wayne, he was Batman, and that's insane, right? Because I think it's Ben, and then Robert Pattinson, and then Christian Bale, and then I could do that list later. We do it in a different podcast. But I'm just gonna say that everybody's take on these characters are always different. Everybody loved Toby because he was the first. Everybody loved Andrew because he was the more cool, geeky kind of Spider-Man, like the suave version of Spider-Man. And then you have Tom Holland, which he was the younger of them, but it was still great. I don't hate Tom Holland. I think Tom Holland is a great character. I just feel like his stories in the movies have relied so much on Tony Stark. And I'm like, if you guys lean away from that, I think we could have a better movie. I think we could accept it a lot more, you know. And I thought his third film felt like an origin film for him, and I loved it. Loved the storytelling for it. I love how they brought back the older Spider-Man, and it was great, right? Why can't DC have the same? Because DC is not the same. DC and Marvel have similar key points or similar characters and stuff like that, but they all lead to different, you know, different stories and cultures and stuff like that. And I love that for both sides. You know, I choose DC because of the darker tones. You know, when you're a kid, you love Marvel, but when you grow up, like I grew up with Marvel, and I was just like, come on, like Eternals. I know a lot of people are gonna be like, Eternals was trash. The story could have been better of Eternals. There was a lot of confusion in it, but it was a darker take, and I actually enjoyed it. Like the Netflix Marvel series, I actually enjoyed. I didn't enjoy Jessica Jones too much, but I loved Punisher and I loved Daredevil. Those were darker, grittier tones of these characters, and I loved it. And it's for real. Like I really wanted this to be a movie, and I think the 3 seasons that we got from Daredevil were amazing. And I hope you know, Matt Murdock comes back. You know, like in the DC. I mean, I hope I hope Matt Murdock comes back into the MCU, and you know, they introduce him in a fair way, that it's not like lessening what he did in his own show. You know, I think it'll be good. You know, Charlie Cox, great actor. Amazing actor. I believed him. I didn't hate Ben Affleck's acting in Daredevil. I just didn't like the story for Daredevil. in that movie. You know, it was just it's kind of like I enjoyed it because it was a good comic book movie. When I was younger, I would take any comic book movie, no matter how bad it was. Example: Batman Forever and Batman and Robin. Two of the funniest and corniest movies of Batman out there, because it reminded me so much of the Adam West campy kind of Batman. George Clooney seemed like he just acted like George Clooney, not Bruce Wayne. And I was just like, come on. Like, the older I got, I understood it. But I love the character. I love Mr. Freeze's, whole outfit. He had like the corniest puns. Poison Ivy, same thing. The way that they talked, it was like, come on, this is unnatural. You're gonna go from Tim Burton's to this, Joel Schumacher version of Batman. And again, as a kid, I enjoyed it, but the older I got, I was just like, this is corny. Just like every movie that there's out there, there's a certain of understanding that you have as a child, and then the older you get, the more you enjoy a certain movie, and that is my topic point. This is what I'm gonna talk about why I think DC and Marvel can coexist and still have the same but different audience. And I think we have to understand that. We have to appreciate both of them. I think we could appreciate both of them, and we have to understand them both as what they are and where they're going. But these toxic fans that we get all the time that are like, oh, well, they're throwing, like, I get it, make memes of DC, make memes of Marvel and stuff like that, but enjoy both of them. Don't criticize the other person. Like, well, because again, my friend that triggered me to wanting to make this video, he sent me stuff about stuff that I didn't even say, but he said that I said, and I was like, I didn't. And like, we can go back and check our thread and we could talk about it, because I remember at one point he was saying that the CW is really good, better than the movies. And I was just like, huh? And then he told me the Suicide Squad movie, the David Ayer, the Warner Brothers cut. I'm going to say the Warner Brothers cut because I'm still waiting for the David Ayer version of the Suicide Squad. I feel like that one's going to be crazy. That was supposed to introduce Steppenwolf. So I think we still need that. But I remember him telling me that movie was good. And I remember going out, like, I went to see that with my sister. And I was like, the story sucked. This story sucked.
Let me say something to you as a friend. You suck.
It didn't make sense. But I love the characters. I love how they introduced everybody somewhat. We didn't really need all that introduction like that, but it was great. I love the characters. I love the people who played each character. I didn't hate them. I just didn't like the story. The story didn't make sense to me. For him to say that was the best DC movie, I was like, bruh, like, what are you looking at? What did you just watch? That is not the same film that we watched. Like, come on. Let's make comparisons, right? And like, off of that, I was just like, yeah, I saw a lot of people giving good reviews about that, like saying that this movie was good, this is the best DC, and I'm like, hell no, this is the worst DC movie, And then we get Shazam was a funny, campy kind of like how they were promoting it. It was like big Tom Hanks big movie for Shazam, and I did feel that, but I felt like there was a lot of things missing from that movie that it just kind of made it too campy for me. And I was just like, I still enjoyed the movie. I thought the movie was good. It was funny. It made me laugh. And I love Zachary Levi, except for the part where he started denying that the Snyder Cut was real. And what happened, bruh? It was real. Shut up. But I don't know, maybe he was playing the part that they told him that he couldn't say stuff. But anyways, the studio wants to give you what you want. But when toxic fans don't shut the hell up and tell them exactly what they want, we go into ruins and we get something different, something new, like the Justice League, right? We're gonna call it the Justice League. I know the Justice League from 2017, the Justice League, they got Joss Whedon to come in and help Zack when he was having trouble. He lost his daughter. It was a sad time for him. It was hard, it was difficult, and the studio was getting involved. If you don't know the story, go look it up. All right, don't criticize Zack without even knowing his story. Like, the studio was getting involved. It was getting overbearing for him. It changed the characters and changed everything he wanted to do. And Joss Whedon stepped in, and because he did the Avengers, he wanted to, they're like, oh, he's the perfect guy to rewrite this and take it a different way. And it did. He took it to a different way. And I felt like it wanted to be the Avengers, but a ripoff. And it felt like that. It felt like that. Seeing the Justice League, Zack Snyder's Justice League last year, made me appreciate Zack Snyder's film so much more, his storytelling so much more, because I felt like after this film, you could have done a spin-off of a Justice League member that was in this and do great, right? There were certain things in Batman versus Superman that felt rushed, right? And then the ultimate cut, we got a little bit extra and a little bit more emphasis, and I'm like, okay, see this makes more sense. And I wish they would have gone along this route. Like Marvel, their movies were getting better every time they did another movie. They were getting better and better. And then there was like a stalemate where they were just like, we didn't know what to give them. We don't. Same thing. DC had to go through their growth. They wanted to do theirs kind of backwards. They want to do the team up and then individually. It would have worked if we would have got Zack's vision back in 2017. Would we have accepted it the same way? Probably not. Probably not. Maybe the time would tell, if we would have accepted, Zack Snyder's Justice League the way he put it out there. I think he would have made it into a 3-hour cut instead of a 4-hour cut, because there were some elements of that story that I felt weren't necessary. But I get it, because they were telling a bigger story for each character. So every available screen time that they had for each character was a development, so they can have their own ground to stand on for the DC universe. But because studio got involved, there was no ground to stand on, so they were just stepping on stones, and they didn't know where to go with the stories, and again, like, I could get into that in a different video, but a lot of the things that we think as fans is that, oh, we want something different, and then when we get it, we're like, no, we wanted something similar to what we had before, and that's where you get the confusion, and those kind of fans kind of like, come on, man, like, appreciate what you got. Like the Gotham series, right? I love the Gotham series to a certain degree. I thought that show was great. There was parts where I was just like, come on, yeah, I could have done this better. Like the season finale, of Gotham, I was just like, like the series finale, sorry, of Gotham was like, For me, it felt flat. Like it could have been better. It just felt really flat. There were some characters that I loved and enjoyed throughout the whole show. I loved their take on these certain characters, but because DC didn't want them to do this or that, they were limited. So because of that limitation, both sides of the studio, both studios, Marvel and DC, both get criticized because of that. Studios interference, studios stepping in, and stuff like that. But sometimes there's some things that are made for casual fans, and they're like, oh, this is not what I wanted, and wasn't made for the real fans. It's kind of like, what happened with the Star Wars and stuff, right? Because when we got The Last Jedi, right, I remember people started saying, oh, this movie sucked and all this, and to be honest, the movie could have been better, but there was like 30 minutes of that film that I think you could have cut out. You could have reduced, I think, a good 30 minutes of that movie, and the movie would have been a lot better. The story was still kind of like, but still, like, I think it could have been better. But then there was these toxic fans. I'm sorry, if you boycotted Solo, a Star Wars story, you messed up, because I thought that film was great. I thought that movie was great. The element of it, the whole thing, the actor, yes, he probably didn't look like Han Solo, but I promise you, by the end of the movie, you would think that is Han Solo. You would have appreciated the character development in that movie. And if you didn't watch it, Ron Howard did a great job. I know he had to reshoot the whole thing, basically. I think it was like 80%. I don't remember necessarily, but basically the whole film. But the film was still great for what it was. And not a lot of people appreciate it because they wanted to boycott it because of something that happened. And we see this again when it comes to DC. DC does, like, some of these toxic fans just get involved and they don't even know what the hell they're talking about, and yada yada yada. And it's like, I saw myself becoming one of these people. I saw myself being like, whatever the studio would say, I would follow. Okay. And then whatever the review people would say, I'm like, I kind of agree with that. But I didn't necessarily agree with it. It's just like the overall audience, they were just like, oh, we're in agreement to this. And that's what's the biggest problem. I think some of my friends have a certain bias for certain things, and then they see certain reviews that they're like, oh yeah, I agree with this. But it's not them actually telling the story. That's why after I watch a film, I like to sit down or talk to somebody about it. And I wanted to do a podcast about Batman and stuff like that, and we kind of did, but it was kind of like all over the place. But I want to sit down and talk about the film fresh, and then rewatch it, and then give a different take. And I think every movie deserves that. But I always think that there's those movies that stand out above all the other ones, like those movies that I could say that those movies are rewatchable. I could watch them over and over again, not get tired. And there's some movies of DC that I could do that, and then there's some movies of Marvel that I could do that as well. But once I understood and realized that we get lost trying to defend something so horrible, I started to understand that that wasn't my opinion. It was an opinion driven by the majority of the masses that are saying this and that. And I was like, come on, man. Like, do we need to really compare? Why can't we just love a film for what it is? Because sometimes I see films like indie films, they're like, this movie sucked, and I'm like, you don't know what it was made for. You don't know what kind of story it was telling. Sometimes there's some indie films that suck, or there's some studio films like big budget films that they just can't tell the story right, and they're just like they keep trying and trying, and it's like, how do these movies get greenlit, and then they go forward? It just doesn't make sense to me. I'm going to say this a little bit. I'm already repeating myself a lot, but I'm going to say this a lot too. We can love anything we want. We could watch, read what we want, and overall not watch or read something that we don't care for, right? If you don't love DC, shut up. If you don't love Marvel, shut up. Like, it's not your ground. If you watch both of them, if you can give an honest opinion without being biased to either side, then, you have we all have our opinions, and we are free to our opinions, but don't be criticizing something else if you don't understand it. Like, if you don't understand DC or where they're going with their characters, shut up. Let the real fans, let the DC fans talk about it. Let them actually dissect it, because if you look up online, there's a good majority of DC fans that hate what's out in DC. Same thing for Marvel. There's Marvel fans that hate what Marvel's done, but because of the majority, these billions of dollars, what does the $1 billion matter if it wasn't a success, as in like, I left with something. It's the same. Because I feel like Marvel overall has been becoming the same thing over and over again. Just giving you, this is it. This is what we give you. You like it. You feed it. Give us $1 billion. I don't like that idea. I don't like that. Because, like I said, I felt like the Han Solo movie could have gotten so much more, but it didn't. And Rian Johnson, right? Who did the Last Jedi? He got criticized for things he said, and I don't think he meant them in that necessarily that way. Because when he said, I got offended, but I still wanted to watch the Solo movie, because it wasn't him that was directing; it was a different director. And Rian Johnson is a great director overall, right? He's a great storyteller, But this movie, I felt like he was a fan of this movie. I really did feel like he was a fan of The Last Jedi, because he brought Yoda back, like puppet Yoda in a Jedi ghost form, right? And I loved it. Who can criticize that part? Like, they were like, come on, Luke. I hate that he was so old that he, Yoda came into his life later on, and he didn't, what's he called? He didn't realize his mistake beforehand, and they had to let years go by. But like, I wanted more of Luke. I wanted Luke as in like Legends. And I know when Disney bought Lucasfilm and all that stuff, everything changed, and they got rid of all Legends, and anything that was canon back then, it's not canon. If it's not on film, if it's not a show, it's not canon. Just, and they still retcon some things. But I think Rian Johnson did a good job trying to mold this movie. I hate that J.J. Abrams came back and then threw his script out, because I kind of felt like Rian Johnson was trying to work with what he had and try to build a story from where he was. But imagine if all three of these directors did a great job to tell the story that they wanted to tell, but they were limited because of the previous director, because there wasn't a storyline. There was just like, let's just see where it goes. And I think that was the biggest mistake for Star Wars. Because George Lucas, he said he started from the middle when he did the original Star Wars trilogy. He started from the middle, and then he wanted to tell that story. And then years gone by, and then they kept asking him. He was like, you know what? I'm going to retell the story. But I'm going to retell it my way. He's going to tell the whole, the backstory of Darth Vader, being Anakin, and how he fell, whatever. And I think The Phantom Menace wasn't a bad movie. I thought it was a good movie. It wasn't, when I was a kid, I loved the movie. I loved Jar Jar Binks, and I know a lot of fans of Jar Jar Binks, Darth Jar Jar Binks. We've been waiting for that for years. But the Attack of the Clones, I feel like that story, it was kind of like lame. And then Revenge of the Sith was the best of the prequel trilogy. I love that movie. That was as close as the original Star Wars telling, like storyline telling that we got. I love that version of Anakin falling into the dark side. Because the second one, it seemed like he was complaining too much. He was a little bit of a crybaby. But the third one, he was still a little bit of a crybaby. But it was a good, I like his, letting the dark side take over for him. And you got to appreciate that, because for me, I think, I think Empire Strikes Back was, I think it was the best movie until Revenge of the Sith, because I remember when I was a kid, I asked my dad to buy these movies for me because I was like, I never seen them, I want to watch them. They said these were the original, and he bought them, the DVDs that were barely came out. The DVD box set came out, and it was like $80. He bought it for my birthday, and I was like, damn, and I watched them, and I was just like, wow, CGI sucks, or like the visual effects sucked. But the story was great, and then the older I got, I started to appreciate the movie a lot more. And I was like, they did the updated versions of it. And like now, if you see it, it's still like, you could tell that it's aged footage, but it's still good because the story is good. So it doesn't matter how old this is. This is still a great story, especially Empire Strikes Back, which was for me like Revenge of the Sith. It was there. And I felt like The Last Jedi was trying to be that, but it wasn't. It didn't end up being that. And then we got The Rise of Skywalker, which I have no idea what J.J. Abrams wanted to do. I love the concept of Ben Solo redeeming himself, bringing redemption. But the whole Rey and him healing each other kind of thing, it was very confusing. And it was like, how did they learn this? You could go back to Revenge of the Sith and say that Palpatine somehow had it engraved in his genes, and that's why Rey ended up being able to heal somebody, because he could heal people and stop them from dying. And I know that's what JJ kind of touched back, but he didn't really address it, so that was kind of confusing for people who didn't understand the story or don't know the stories in the background and stuff like that. But for them to throw all the, I think if we could get a retcon sequel trilogy, I would love that. But I doubt it. I doubt we will get a retcon, I like what they're doing with Mandalorian, with the book of Mando. I know it's the book of Boba Fett, but it's the book of Mando to me. And then they got Obi-Wan series. They got the Ahsoka series. They got the, what's the Andor series. They got so many series that are coming out. Even, dude, Rogue One. Rogue One was a great movie. I knew the outcome. All of them were going to die. But that movie was great for what it was, But I feel like I'm ranting too much of Star Wars, and I want to talk about, DC and Marvel. I want to close out what I was talking about Star Wars. Were the Star Wars sequel movies good? Yes, but overall, no. They were good in CGI and how big they made it. They made billions of dollars too. That's what I'm saying. You can make $1 billion and the story sucks. It's more of them selling toys. They're selling merchandise off these movies, and the stories still suck. That's what I'm saying. Marvel is in the same boat. I think that there's some stories that they could have done better, but they didn't. And some of them are overrated, to be honest. But back to my point. DC and Marvel are so much alike, but at the same time so different. Yes, many characters are the same in many ways, but the storylines grab people's attentions. Different storylines, different ways. Like, I still get Batman comic books. Like, to this day, I just got Batman Imposter, and I think I saw a lot of people not like this story, but I kind of like it. I'm enjoying it so far. I haven't finished it, but I enjoy it. I got the Batman Eternal. I got almost the whole, the New 52 run of Batman, and that is technically, for me, is my favorite run of Batman. Like, this Batman seems so cool. I wish we could get something like this. Will we ever get it? Probably not, because if DC keeps trying to be like Marvel, we're gonna get the same rinse and repeat until we get new executives. And that's why I'm hoping this Discovery merger just brings back, like, I want the Snyderverse to end. That's gonna probably be one of those unpopular opinions, but I want it to end, but I want it to end on Zack's terms. I feel like he's not done telling the story. He can finish telling his nightmare story, and then DC could do what they do best and just restart again. We do Flashpoint over and over again, and I don't hate that. I love that. I love that concept that DC found something that they could do. Marvel's taking a different concept to the multiverse, and I love that as well. The Loki series, I saw people who hated the Loki series, Marvel fans that hated the Loki series, and I was like, dude, this is a great way for them to retell a story that is similar but is different, and I love it. Like, they could retell the story over and over again, and again, a different podcast and stuff like that. But yeah, But like the storylines, like I was saying, like we get this like in pro wrestling, right? You get like long term storytelling, and then you get short term storytelling, and then you get those that are just like random storytelling, and when you get those random ones, it's just like, come on, bro, like make this Elseworld, make this like Joker. That's a great film on its own. Do I want to connect it to DC in any way besides what they're doing, like taking a realistic take on the Joker? No, I want Mr. Freeze to have his own, like, or even Lex Luthor. Imagine if they just like call it Luthor or something like that, and they just do like a character study on Lex Luthor and how he became the way he was. And there was talks about, because there was, Joker alluded to Batman, and Lex Luthor can allude to Superman, which would be great for me. But does this have to all be connected? I don't think so. And I think Marvel's having a difficult time like ungrouping everything, because for me, I feel like, let's say Multiverse of Madness is going to get crazier, and how are you going to come back from that? How do you come back from that? And then I saw theories about saying how the X-Men are going to be evil in this iteration. I was like, I don't want them to be evil. Like I want like, if you want to do the Brotherhood of Mutants and them be evil, that'll be cool, but don't do the whole X-Men. Like, X-Men shouldn't be bad. They're the good ones. They're the good guys, right? But anyways, we love and hate things that seem to feel too familiar, and hate to love things that are not what you wanted, right? But I'm gonna tell you this: studios are gonna do whatever they want to try to appease to your wants and needs and stuff like that. But who understands you? The only people who understand you is yourself, right? Stop criticizing both sides. Stop acting like one side is better than the other. They both have their audience. We can coexist. We can coexist in the sense of, I love this style of superhero movies, and I love this style of superhero movies. I love them both. I have the whole MCU, even the other Marvel films, Ghost Rider, Spirit of Vengeance. Nobody liked that movie. That movie was trash. Like, I felt like Nicolas Cage was just acting crazy. He was just, he just loved doing that. I think he was enjoying just screaming and at the top of his lungs and stuff like that. But overall, there's Marvel movies that are just trash. Even shows that were trash. Like the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. loved it in the beginning, then they just got confused, and then they were like, you know what, this is not Marvel, this is not MCU related. But they are, but they're not, but they are, but they're not. Just like the Defenders, that they are, but they're not. And DC hasn't really done that a lot. It's just DC hasn't had that one person that could tell the story better than everybody else. I think Zack Snyder's story was more like the Injustice series. I like that he called it the Nightmare sequence, or the Nightmare storyline, and I like that version of DC. Can we get that version? Can we have that version finished, and then we can move on to a different, brighter DC if you want? But to me, DC is always going to be grittier. It's never going to be Marvel. Marvel is never going to be DC in the sense of, oh, we're going to get grittier and stuff like that. The grittiest thing that you can do is have Moon Knight be on its own. As they said, the director was like, or the producer said that this is not a part of the MCU continuity right now. And I'm like, okay, great. We need some ground. We need some of these characters that are grounded enough so I can reconnect. Like Falcon and Winter Soldier. Some of the story didn't make sense, but I still love that series overall. Hawkeye. I heard a lot of people didn't like this. This was more like a Kate Bishop show rather than Hawkeye. But it was a Hawkeye show, but it did lack a lot. Wilson Fisk wasn't really the Wilson Fisk that, he had elements of what we wanted, but he wasn't what we wanted, if that makes sense. And I know they're gonna make an Echo show and stuff like that, and like this is how you ground Marvel. DC has been grounded for so long that they try to go out and become so much different, But I think the Man of Steel is one of the greatest Superman movies ever. I know a lot of people don't like Superman Returns. I enjoyed that movie for what it was. Was it Christopher Reeves coming back? No. I hate that they did that. This could have been again another Elseworld kind of storytelling. I love Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight series. It was great for what it was. Could it involve Superman? I don't think so, because I felt like his story was already closing, and it already hit the closing point. Marvel, I feel like they're gonna go back to that, where they're like, let's just have these superheroes be individuals, and then we're gonna have a big team up later on, like restart the MCU. And I think that's what Multiverse of Madness is gonna do, either restart the MCU or be too big to put back together. So either they're gonna go crazy doing these films or whatever, but I think again, this two different, it's like so similar but they're different. It's like let's say the 007, and James Bond, and then you have what you call it, Mission Impossible. Mission Impossible, great series. Then you have Jason Bourne. They're all similar. You got Jack Reacher. What else? Alex Cross. What is it? Alex Cross, something like that, right? You get a lot of these characters that are so similar, but they're not the same product. There's not necessarily the same product. But because we've always had these two rivaling each other, how Marvel was going in debt and they were going to sell to DC, and now that DC doesn't know where they're going, but now this merger with Discovery is going to bring a different iteration. Look, if at the end DC decides to restart their whole thing, I wouldn't be mad. All I want is that Zack finishes his story, and that's it. That's all I want. I just want him to finish the story, and that's it. Then I could be like, I'm at peace because the story is finished. I know that DC was trying to say, oh, the trilogy is over, and I'm like, it's not over. You open a huge door that you can't close. You can't just say Darkseid doesn't exist. You can't say that movie doesn't. I mean, like, that movie doesn't have to happen. It has to happen. If you do it in the next Justice League, I think there has to be at least 2 more movies where Zack is able to close it out. And I know that he had a storyline. I'm sure he's gonna change that story. I'm gonna end this podcast saying this: we can love them both. We can have appreciation for them both. I think I used to have the wrong mentality of saying that this is better than that, and it's not necessarily. Yes, Marvel is more successful, 100%, 1000% if you want. DC, I feel their story is more realistic to me. Oh, how? Like, we can argue about this later, right? We could argue about this later. You could DM me, you could message me and say you hate this podcast that I'm about to release this stuff to the world, and you'd be like, this is ridiculous, you never even got to your point. I did get to my point. I made the point of us having different points of views for both movies, both studios. Marvel can do whatever they want. They're getting all their properties back. DC is they have their stuff. It's just they're on the verge of, having better people who are not just in a business sense. It's more of a, let's tell a good story and sell this good story rather than, because I feel like the Batman movie with Robert Pattinson is a great start for DC to retell all these stories separately, and then later on in life they can put them together. Like, the MCU came together pretty quickly. Within 5 years, it was already like the next best thing, right? Because it was 2008 to 2012 when the first Avenger movie came out. 4 years, right? And they were able to tell a good story, compelling story. Who says that they can't do that with this? Even if they reboot anything else, like any other superhero movie, I just think if they get a good actor, a good person to tell the story, write the story well, it doesn't matter. For me, it doesn't matter where they go. They could go comic accurate, they could go game accurate, anything. They could do whatever they want. Because if you think about it, Marvel, you guys, they've been doing this forever, that they retell the story how they want to, and I don't hate it. Nobody complains about it. But why do we complain when DC does it? It's because DC was trying to be Marvel. They're not trying to be that anymore. I feel like this buyout is a new thing, a new era for DC. So DC, Marvel, if you're either one's fan, if you're Star Trek or if you're Star Trek or Star Wars fan, doesn't matter. If you're Mortal Kombat or Street Fighter fan, doesn't matter. Like, if as a fan you can enjoy it, I think this is a great time to be a fan, and it's a great time to give your opinions based on what you've been around, but don't criticize something that you don't understand, right? Like, criticize something that you understand dearly, like you understand it from the beginning to the end. Like my friend Daryl, if you're watching this, I want to do a X-Men series, a podcast with you. Like, what do you think throughout every X-Men movie? Like, where do you think they had the fallout? Where do you think that they could have gone? Stuff like that. Like, I want to talk about these superheroes that meant so much to us when we were growing up, and now they mean something else to us entirely. Like, one is more popular than the other and stuff like that. I want to talk about that stuff. I want to talk about how we can enjoy all this all together. But stop being toxic, all right? Stop being a toxic fan group. Be loving. Love it for what it is. If you don't like it, don't watch it. If you don't enjoy it, shut up, jabroni. All right, just okay. Anyways, I want to end this and wrap this up. I have 2 other podcasts. I have a podcast that I'm more serious and I am talking more about real life stuff, and it's called What About Yoyo. It's what about my opinions and about life and certain things, and I have a few out there right now. If you want to catch up on that, I'm gonna leave a link down in the description. Then I have my wrestling podcast that I started with my friend Ozzy. Love this guy. He's with me here. He's the Penguin on this show and he's Ozzy on the other show, and he is the Notorious Thumb, and I am the People's Trump in that show. My name is Yoyo, and I love you guys. Leave a comment, share this. You want a part 2 to this? We could talk about how different these things are. Maybe my opinion didn't make sense to you. Maybe my opinion is not exactly what you want, but I'm gonna tell you this. Always remember, that's life. If you didn't like it, if you like pina colada. I hope I touched all my points.
Let me say something to you as a friend. You suck. All right? The reason you can't get work, it's not because people don't like you, man. You know, it's not because people don't want to give you a chance. It's because you suck.